that's what it should do, is just jog your memory, right, to be back to, to have a sense of what it was you were doing. But I mean, that would be the true thing of having it for reference, as opposed to relying on it solely, I think.
Yeah, and I also think just spending, spending like a few days just hiking in the backcountry, even if you're not painting, that's like a huge, help to me if I go back in the studio and work on something from a photograph. It's just, that's just as valuable to me as, setting up my paint box and doing a painting, a sketch.
See, I'm a little different from that. And I think that what happens for me when I'm out there on location with the gear, where, as Dan said, junk? Garbage. With all my gear. What I've seen over the 25 years that I've been painting, I'm only 13. is that when I'm in that kind of concentrated attention that you experience from really studying and really looking and really observing, with the paintbrush in my hand, I'm actually a little better at it. I see when I go out into the woods and I'm doing the hike and walking, and Chuck and I do this all the time as a way to get a little closer. What I see primarily in myself is a struggle to actually really be there, to really be in that woods. But when I have the brush in my hand, when I have the easel in front of me, almost because of the hours and the necessity, I'm forced to eventually meet myself and nature there. And I guess that's what I find absolutely essential to my experience. But I will say that everything everybody's saying, I mean, Scotty's like, right on, and if you really need to paint something that you need to speak to, and the photograph is the only way to actually help facilitate it, I'm all for it. And I'm especially all for other people. I mean, everybody has to be in front of this question for themselves. And I mean, we're all human beings, and we're all these individual manifestations of this great one, right? But I think we like you were saying, Jerry, we're in front of this question about what is my motivation, what is my intention, what's behind my need to make this painting, and can you, in certain times I have bills too, but yet at the same time, can your exploration be one that opens up the ultimate doors of the human experience? Yeah, not just the.
It's interesting though, because I guess I take a little bit exception of the idea that when you work from a photograph, you're only doing it for monetary.
No, and I didn't mean to say that it was only.
Oh, okay.
No. I was really just asking the question.
Oh no, that's good. And well, it's not for me. I can say that. I can't speak for everybody. People will know if they see my shows how poor they sell. I guess I also was just curious we do have people who paint from life and who seem to be advocating only painting from life. I know we all paint from life. Have you and Rose, do you have paintings that you see that you know were painted from photographs that you like, such as like Zorn or even some of Richard's paintings? Or do you pretty much only like things that were painted from life? Just curious.
You're asking me?
No, asking Sherry. Well, I'm asking you. I mean, I know you must. I mean, you must have pieces from photos. Yeah, Wayne, yeah.
I like everybody else's work better than mine.
Since you put me on the spot, my criteria for using a photograph is that I try never to use a photograph of something I haven't already painted from life. I've already had the experience of a photograph that's very similar to something that I've already painted, because unless I've had the experience of painting something from life and absorbed all of the complex mixtures and the harmony of the thing, and here I'm just talking about the color part, and understood the harmony of what I'm painting and the ambient light and all of those things which are subjective to me. Unless I have all those things already in my possession, the photograph, if it's something other than that, similar to that, then I simply don't have enough information to work by. Yeah. And by the way, since I've got the floor here for a minute, since I am in charge, I have to say that you have all been, or most of you should have been passed a card, a blank card, to write a question down for the panel, either the panel in general or a particular person you want to target. And if, by 8 o'clock, if you could pass them down to the right, that's for you people, that's that way. The questions will be collected and heavily edited by American artists, I'm sure, before they pass them. At 8:30, we'll start looking at those cards to answer questions that have come up in your heads as you listen to these geniuses and their things. Let me start another round of questions here to get you off on a related track. It's about if it is necessary, and there are many reasons why it would be necessary to use a photograph. I'll give you an example. For example, when I paint with our puppy painters in Vermont, we either have a model or we have a still life day or we're painting outdoors. Well, I'll get started on a painting and I'll get, maybe halfway through it or 2/3 of the way through it. And I get so involved in going around to my fellow painters and critiquing and helping them and so on, that it's rare that I get a chance to finish it to the point where I would want to sign the picture. And so what I do is I make sure that I have scrutinized the scene or the subject in front of me, and that I have put in all of the things, especially the color. I have put in patches of those unfinished areas that I know I will not find in the photograph when I go home. And then when I have time, I'll stick it in my Apple, my Macintosh, and put it up on the monitor and finish it use the detail that I was not able to capture because of the time constraint. That's one way I use photographs. So my question is, I just wanted to give you that as one example of what I think is a way the way I deal with these wonderful little sketches that I'm able to do from life, and I only do as much as is necessary for me to complete the story and no further, and keep it as sketchy as it was, that charming, sketchy look as it was when I left the puppy painting barn. So my question to the panel is, if somebody has to use a camera, how do you discipline yourself to use photos as a tool rather than as merely a shortcut, or, God forbid, just the sole source of your subject matter? And taking it a little further, if somebody, like, for example, a handicapped person who can't get out, would love to do landscape paintings or whatever, or they're handicapped in some other way, except for total blindness. If somebody has no choice, that's only the use of photos is the way that they have access to subject matter, how can they use photos in the best possible way? Who wants to start? Oh, come on.
Well, that's a small population, right?
Okay, Jeremy. I know you never do this, but if you had a handicapped person who couldn't get out to do it,
Yeah, I guess if there's somebody who...
what would you advise them to get the best out of
Whatever, they couldn't even look out the window.
the skyscraper in New York? You see the blank wall of the skyscraper.
Yeah. Well, you know, hopefully at some point in their life, maybe early on, they're able to get outside. And, you know, for me, I mean, probably touched on it a little bit earlier in my first answer, but you know, I'm painting from photograph. I'm essentially painting from memory, and that's the photo reference is just to kind of remind me of what I wanted to paint and what I was actually seeing when I was there. And so I guess because I'd say just, you know, you're essentially painting from memory. You're not really trying to copy what's in that photograph. Because in the end, it would just look like a photograph. You know, paint, like what Richard said, you want to paint what, he paints what he sees. Paint what you see, not what you see.
I would give them, I would tell them to draw their hand. That's what I would tell them. I would get them to work from life. I really would. I really would. Because I don't think you can learn from a photo. I mean, I think eventually, if you know how to paint and draw, then I think you can work from a photo. But I mean, it depends on what the goal is. You know, I mean, if it's just to make something that makes them feel good, then yeah, then anything. That's great.
I agree with you, Sharon.
You do? You do?
Well, I was just thinking,
want to do that.
I was just thinking about people who simply are handicapped in such a way that they do not have access to what they would love to express in art. And I guess, you know, it's hard to answer that question.
That's a good question.
But I do have an answer for it. But
you know, that actually relates a lot to a lot of emails that we get on people saying to us, well, like, we'll put up photos from journals from India or from Nepal or from wherever we go, and I'll put up, you know, bunch of photographs from the place too, and then with our paintings and things. And it's surprising how many people email us and ask permission to paint the photographs, because they say, it's almost like they are handicapped. They say, well, you know, that's the subject I would love to paint more than anything, but I can't afford to go there. Can I paint your photographs? And I always write them back and just say, you know, I do work from photographs, but it's like Pong said, you know, without having done it from life, without having had that personal emotional experience, it's not even that it's wrong. I don't think it's like, you know, illegal or anything, or their artistic license will be revoked. It's just that they're missing out on a personal expression. And so what I would say to somebody who was handicapped and couldn't go out, I would say, you know, still lifes. You can find the same kind of beauty in a still life, and setting things up like that are from nature if you've never experienced it. And as much as you might think, I'd like to paint the moon or the Mars or something, I mean, you know, you're just not in that position, so you find the beauty in what you have. And
Or as Jeremy said, look out the window.
well, if you have a window, then you definitely get that. I mean, I think it has to be personal experience. I think we're all pretty much in agreement on that point. Yeah.
okay.
Carolyn, did you want to say something?
Well, I think it's really important to have something to say, and by that I don't mean verbally, but visually, about whatever it is that you're painting. And so on some level, one would have to be able to relate to that information. So therefore, what many of the people here have been saying is that the best way to perhaps use any kind of photo reference material is to explore the subject further, or to just use the information to revisit where you have been, to finish up what had already been there. But if you don't have any relationship, a personal relationship with the information, no matter what it is, then how could you possibly have anything to say about it? It's just like a person in a writing class who's told to write what they know. And that could be, you know, could be a painting of the stove, for crying out loud, or the sink, or something that one could relate to, because ultimately, we are not trying to replicate information. We're trying to describe it or explore it or explain the color relationships or the shape or the value.